Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. Imagine holding a small brown coin in your hand, a coin so ordinary that millions of people have touched it, spent it, dropped it, ignored it, and forgotten it inside old drawers and dusty jars. But what if I told you that this same tiny piece of copper, a 1971 1-cent coin from the United States, something people walk past on sidewalks every single day, could secretly be worth a life-changing amount of money, not hundreds, not thousands, not even hundreds of thousands, but a staggering $169 million in today's rare coin market. A value so insanely high that it sounds unreal, unbelievable, almost impossible, yet collectors across the world know that. Certain rare varieties, era strikes, and extremely high-grade 1971 cents have pushed the limits of imagination and rewritten what people believe a simple penny can be worth. And when you truly start to understand the hidden world behind this coin, its weight, its metal composition, its mint mark, its design elements, its unexpected history, and the unbelievably rare conditions that can elevate a dull copper coin into a once-in-a-generation treasure, you begin to realize there is nothing ordinary about this tiny artifact at all. Instead, it becomes a doorway into a world of mystery, obsession, treasure hunting, and the kind of numismatic excitement that only grows stronger the deeper you go. Because this is not just a story about a penny, this is a story about luck, history, craftsmanship, and the shocking possibility that one of the rarest and most valuable cents ever discovered might be hiding in someone's attic, stored inside a jar, or stuck inside a forgotten roll of coins that hasn't been opened in 50 years. Think for a moment about the millions of people who handled the 1971 penny without knowing what they were touching. Factory workers paid their lunch breaks with it. Kids picked it off the ground on the way to school. Cash registers across America shuffled thousands of them every single day. Yet today, collectors aren't searching for all of them. They're hunting for that one impossible cent, that one extremely rare version created by a specific combination of pressure, die alignment, metal purity, strike sharpness, minting errors, and perfectly preserved surfaces that make the coin leap off the grading scales and land in the highest possible tier, the type of coin that becomes legendary. A tiny scratch means losing millions. A tiny spot of discoloration destroys the dream. A tiny fingerprint, invisible to the naked eye, can bring the value crashing down. So the chances of survival, the chances that a perfect 1971 penny exists, are unbelievably small. And that is exactly why collectors go insane for it, because the rarest treasures always hide in the most unexpected places. And when you consider the actual physical characteristics of the coin, the weight of 3.11 grams, the iconic Lincoln portrait on the front, the familiar wheat-style legacy replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse, the bold D mint mark representing the Denver Mint, the rich copper tone created from a mixture of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, you begin to appreciate how this tiny object carries the story of American history in the palm of your hand. It's not just a coin, it's a miniature time capsule. It's a reminder of the era that shaped it, an era where people could still buy something meaningful for a single cent, and where copper still dominated the composition before the government changed to cheaper materials. The 1971 cent represents the end of an age, a shift in American minting, and a turning point in coin value where minor variations in production created incredibly rare anomalies that collectors crave today. But the real reason this coin has become so famous, so desired, and so shockingly valuable comes from the almost myth-like stories circulating within the coin collecting world. Stories of people who unknowingly held a fortune. Stories of coins discovered in old estate boxes, coins pulled from penny rolls purchased for only $1, coins that sat unrecognized in storage for decades until the right expert finally examined them under magnification and realized what they had. And then suddenly, overnight, that person went from owning a random penny to owning one of the most valuable cents in the world. And that dream, that possibility, that electrifying chance that maybe, just maybe, someone watching this right now could be holding the next $1 million version of this coin. That is what makes the 1971 penny so powerful, so fascinating, and so intensely sought after. Because when collectors look at this coin, they don't see what the average person sees. They don't see a piece of pocket change. They see microscopic details, doubling on letters, razor-sharp edges on Lincoln's portrait, perfectly preserved luster on copper surfaces untouched for half a century, extreme die polishing marks, misalignment errors, unusual planchet strikes, and the rarest anomaly of them all, perfect mint-state condition preserved through time like a miracle. They see a coin that could rewrite auctions, shock experts, or set new world records. They see a hidden treasure that only the trained eye can detect, a treasure that could be sitting unnoticed in someone's jar right now. Picture this. Somewhere in America, inside a dusty drawer, lies a jar full of random pennies collected over years. Someone throws in their spare change, never thinking about it twice. The jar fills slowly, quietly ignored. And inside that jar, pressed between dull modern zinc cents, could be a glowing copper 1971 penny with surfaces so perfect, so untouched, that it would make professional graders gasp. That kind of coin doesn't just appear. It survives, against all odds, hidden away, protected by pure coincidence. And that possibility, the thrilling uncertainty, is why collectors search obsessively. Because even though millions were minted, only a microscopic fraction survive in pristine condition, and out of those, only 1 or 2 might reach the extreme valuation levels that push the market into the hundreds of millions. When we begin exploring the true story behind the 1971 1-cent coin, we are not simply talking about another piece of circulating currency. We are stepping into a world where history, metal science, minting technology, collector psychology, and the unpredictable nature of survival all collide to create something far more fascinating than most people could ever imagine. This single copper cent, minted more than half a century ago, carries layers of meaning that go far beyond its tiny denomination. It carries the story of a nation during a time of transition, a mint facility working relentlessly under heavy demand, a design that had already become iconic across generations, and a set of characteristics that would one day transform select surviving pieces into some of the most sought-after treasures in modern numismatics. To truly understand why certain 1971 pennies have reached values that defy logic, reaching into the tens or even hundreds of millions, you have to understand everything surrounding the coin. Why it was made, how it was made, what made some versions ordinary and others extraordinary, and why collectors today go absolutely wild for the rarest examples. People often assume that a penny is too common to be important. They imagine massive bags of them pouring out of minting presses, millions of identical coins, each one as unremarkable as the next. But that assumption is what blinds so many to the hidden opportunities that lie in coins like the 1971 Yes, it is true that millions upon millions of them were minted, but what is not obvious to the untrained eye is how extremely specific conditions, both natural and accidental, turned only a microscopic number of them into ultra-rarities. Imagine millions of coins passing through the same machines, yet only a tiny handful emerge with the perfect combination of flawless surfaces, perfectly struck details, rare die varieties, minting irregularities, and uncirculated preservation. The chance of this happening is so small that it borders on miraculous. And that is why collectors chase these coins with such intensity, because they know that the world's most valuable treasures are often created not by design, but by accident. But before we get to those rare anomalies, we need to understand the backdrop, the world in which the 1971 penny was born. The year 1971 was a turning point in American monetary history. Inflation pressures were rising. The cost of metal was fluctuating. And the Denver Mint, responsible for producing the 1971 cents, was pushing its equipment harder than ever to meet the nation's never-ending demand for small change. Every grocery store, every gas station, every vending machine, every cash register depended on cents, and millions had to be produced daily to keep up. That pressure created the perfect environment for unusual dies, overstressed machinery, polishing inconsistencies, and unintentional variations that would later become prized by collectors. In simpler terms, the chaotic minting environment gave birth to mistakes that today are worth fortunes. At the same time, the coin's iconic design was already cemented in American culture. The obverse featured the well-known portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by Victor David Brenner decades earlier, a design people had grown up seeing their entire lives. And yet, Even within such a familiar design, subtle differences in the way the portrait struck onto the metal, the texture of the copper surface, the curvature of the date numbers, and the sharpness of the lettering all created a hidden world of grating complexity. Most people would never notice these nuances, but for professionals who have spent years examining coins under high-powered magnification, these microscopic details are the difference between a 1-cent coin and a $1 million masterpiece. Even a tiny flaw, a small nick the size of a grain of sand, can reduce the grade dramatically. That means a coin produced in 1971, tossed into circulation, sliding around with other coins, hitting metal surfaces, or simply sitting in pockets for months, would be destroyed instantly as a high-grade candidate. Only coins that somehow avoided circulation entirely, coins pulled aside unknowingly by someone who liked their shine, or coins that were sealed inside mint sets immediately, could survive in the pristine condition needed to reach those legendary values. But even survival isn't enough. To reach the upper tier of rarity and value, a 1971 D penny needs the perfect combination of preservation and unusual characteristics. And these unusual characteristics, often the result of minting errors or unexpected die variations, are what truly set the super rarities apart. In the early 1970s, die polishing was common, and sometimes this polishing removed small details unintentionally. Sometimes doubling occurred on the letters or the date. Sometimes the strike pressure was slightly misaligned. And sometimes the planchets themselves had unusual textures or impurities. To an untrained eye, these details mean nothing. But to collectors, a small doubling on the word, Liberty, or on the date, 1971, can transform a penny from pocket change to a trophy piece worth more than luxury property. These rare pieces become legendary because they are so unlikely to exist at all, and when they do appear, competition among collectors becomes fierce. Bidding wars break out. Auction records get shattered. And the value climbs to levels most people would never expect from a penny. To truly understand why the 1971 D 1-cent coin carries such an extraordinary reputation among collectors today, we must begin by breaking down the most fundamental aspects of the coin itself, those basic physical features that millions of people overlooked for decades but which now serve as the foundation for determining its rarity, desirability, and astronomical value potential. When you pick up a 1971 D penny, you might think you're holding something ordinary, but the deeper you look, the more you realize that every tiny element of its design, from its weight to its metal composition, from the shape of each letter to the exact curvature of Lincoln's profile, plays a role in defining its uniqueness. And the way these tiny details interact with time, circulation, and minting conditions determines whether you are holding an everyday coin worth a cent or a hidden treasure worth more than entire luxury mansions combined. The weight of the coin, 3.11 grams, seems like such a small detail that most people would never even think about it. Yet that single number is the starting point of the entire story. That weight comes from the classic bronze alloy used in 1-cent coins for decades, 95% copper, with the remaining 5% made of tin and zinc. This composition gives the coin its warm reddish tone, its iconic copper glow, and its distinctive metallic ring when dropped onto a hard surface. But this composition also creates something else: sensitivity. Copper reacts easily with air, moisture, oils from human skin, and changes in temperature and storage conditions. Over time, copper darkens, spots, tones, and corrodes. That means that keeping a 1971 D penny in perfect condition is a nearly impossible task unless it was removed from circulation on day one and stored with extraordinary care. Even a brief moment of contact with another coin, even a tiny slide across a countertop, is enough to create micro-scratches that permanently lower its grade. And this is why high-grade 1971 D pennies are so rare, because the composition itself works against their survival. Then there is the iconic obverse design, the portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Millions of people have seen it, touched it, spent it, dropped it, but almost nobody has studied it in the way collectors do. The sculpted details of Lincoln's beard, his coat, the lines above the eye, the shape of his cheekbone, the depth of the profile, all of these features contain clues about the strength and quality of the coin's strike. On most 1971 D cents, these details are weak or mushy because the Denver Mint was pushing its dies to their limits. Many dies were worn, overused, or inadequately polished. As a result, a crisp, razor-sharp strike on a 1971 D penny is incredibly rare, and when it appears, collectors immediately recognize that they may be looking at a treasure. Even the clarity of the word liberty, the sharpness of the date, 1971, and the clean separation of elements in the motto, "In God We Trust," are crucial. A professional grader can look at these elements for half a second and instantly know whether a coin has the potential to reach the upper levels of value. But among all the features on the obverse, the mint mark, the small d, placed just beneath the date, is the key to understanding everything. That tiny letter represents the Denver Mint, one of the busiest minting facilities in the world during the early 1970s. The pressure on Denver was enormous. Demand for cents was hitting unprecedented levels, and the mint had no choice but to run its presses at high speed, often using dies far beyond their ideal lifespan. Dies cracked, dies doubled, dies wore unevenly, dies were replaced mid-production, and some were polished so aggressively that they altered the coin's finer details. In an environment like this, the probability of unusual varieties increases dramatically. Yet at the same time, the probability of a perfectly preserved example decreases just as sharply because rapid production made it nearly impossible for coins to escape the system without being thrown into bags, rolled mechanically, shipped in bulk, and mixed with countless other coins. This is where the incredible rarity of the highest grade 1971 D pennies truly begins. Imagine millions of cents crashing into each other inside giant industrial bags, tumbling across metal machines, pouring through counting tubes, and then spilling into circulation across the country. The chaos of the minting and distribution process was essentially a giant metal storm, and inside this storm were a few extraordinary coins with nearly perfect strikes, flawless surfaces, full luster, and microscopic precision. But because of the chaos, almost all of them were damaged instantly. That means only the coins that somehow avoided that violent journey could survive in pristine condition. Maybe a bank worker pulled them out. Maybe a mint set protected them. Maybe someone liked the shine and stored them away. But whatever the case, their survival was pure luck. As we continue deeper into the world of the 1971 D 1-cent coin, the story becomes even more complex. Because understanding this coin isn't just about recognizing its physical features or knowing that certain rare varieties exist, it's about understanding how value itself is created, how collectors think, how rarity emerges over time, and how certain coins transform from everyday objects into priceless artifacts. The 1971 D penny is a perfect example of how something so small and overlooked can become a symbol of extraordinary value when the right conditions align. And to understand this transformation fully, we have to look beyond the basic appearance of the coin and dive into the forces that shaped its market, its survival, and its modern-day mystique. The first force that shaped the rarity of the 1971 D penny is time. Time is the great destroyer of coins, especially copper coins. From the moment a penny is minted, the clock begins ticking. Exposure to air changes the surface. Humidity darkens the metal. Oils from hands leave fingerprints that turn into dark patches. Even sitting in a jar for decades can cause slow chemical reactions that reduce the luster, turning a once brilliant coin into a dull surface. That means every passing year reduces the number of surviving high-grade examples. And since more than 50 years have gone by, the remaining pristine examples are unbelievably scarce. When a coin is minted, thousands or even millions may exist in good condition, but as decades pass, the vast majority disappear, either damaged, lost, or destroyed. Only a tiny handful survive in a condition collectors consider extraordinary. But time didn't just destroy coins, it also hid them. Over the decades, people stored coins in boxes, jars, drawers, envelopes, coin albums, piggy banks, and mint sets. Many of these storage locations were far from ideal. Some coins were exposed to moisture, some were left in hot attics, some sat near chemicals or rubber bands that caused discoloration. Yet in rare cases, a coin ended up in a perfect environment, sealed, untouched, isolated from air and temperature changes, protected from friction and human contact. In these cases, time worked in reverse, not as a destroyer, but as a preserver. It froze the coin in the exact condition it was in the moment it left the mint, creating a time capsule. These are the coins collectors treasure today. These are the coins that can reach unbelievable values, because they represent survival against impossible odds. Another major force shaping the value of the 1971 D penny is population rarity. In the world of coin collecting, rarity doesn't just mean how many coins were originally made, it means how many exist today in the highest grades. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC certify millions of coins, and their population reports reveal a startling truth. Only a microscopic number of 1971 D pennies have ever reached the top levels of preservation. Most coins fall into lower grades because they were circulated heavily or because they suffered small imperfections during minting or storage. Even coins that look shiny to the average person usually fall short of the strict standards used by professional graders. Luster breaks, faint scratches, tiny spots, and subtle wear marks, even the smallest flaw can downgrade a coin instantly. So when a single 1971 D penny appears in a top grade, especially one with perfect luster and fully detailed strike, it becomes a superstar, instantly commanding massive attention from collectors around the world. This is where psychology enters the picture. Collectors are not just purchasing metal, they are purchasing rarity, history, prestige, and the thrill of owning something almost no one else has. When a coin like the 1971 D penny emerges in ultra-high grade, collectors view it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance. They know that these coins do not simply appear every day. They know that an opportunity missed today may never come again. And because of this mindset, competition becomes fierce. Auctions heat up. Bidding wars erupt. Prices rise rapidly. And the story of the coin becomes even larger. When collectors see that a 1971 D penny has sold for millions, the next buyer may be willing to pay even more. The value becomes self-reinforcing. Rarity creates demand, demand creates value, value creates more demand, and the cycle continues. But it isn't only condition rarity that shapes the value of this coin, variety rarity plays a huge role too. The early 1970s were a chaotic period for die production, and because of this, unusual varieties of the 1971 D penny were created by accident. Some dies wore unevenly, creating mushy details. Some were polished so aggressively that fine details disappeared. Others were misaligned, creating slightly off-center strikes. And in extremely rare cases, doubling occurred on the date or lettering, creating a spectacular visual effect that collectors adore. These varieties were not intentional. They were accidents born of pressure, speed, and the limitations of minting technology at the time. And because they were accidents, only a small number were ever produced. Even fewer survived. And only a handful remain in high-grade condition. These are the coins collectors hunt for feverishly. Then there is the influence of provenance, the history of who owned the coin and how it was found. Coins with dramatic discovery stories often attract even higher values because collectors love a story that elevates the coin beyond its physical form. Imagine a 1971 D penny discovered inside an old estate box that had been untouched since the early 1970s, or a perfect coin found inside a forgotten bankroll purchased decades ago. Stories like these create excitement, media attention, and collector frenzy, which all contribute to increased value. And as more extraordinary coins are discovered, documented, and sold, the legend of the 1971 D penny grows stronger, fueling even more interest and pushing prices higher. Market speculation also plays a central role. As more people learn about the value potential of rare pennies, more collectors enter the market. More beginners start roll hunting. More investors purchase high-grade coins as long-term assets. And with each new person entering the market, demand grows while supply remains frozen. You cannot create new 1971 D pennies today. The surviving population will never increase, it can only decrease. That imbalance, rising demand, fixed supply, is what drives values to extreme heights. This is how a coin once worth a single cent can evolve into a multi-million-dollar collectible. When you examine the deeper layers behind the 1971 1-cent coin, you begin to realize that the minting process itself is one of the greatest sources of hidden value. Most people imagine the mint as a perfectly organized, fully automated factory producing flawless coins with machine precision accuracy. But in the early 1970s, the reality was much different. Back then, mint technology was far less advanced. Machines were powerful but not as precise as today's systems. Dies wore down faster. Presses required constant adjustment. Human involvement was higher. And any combination of slight misalignments, microscopic mechanical inconsistencies, or rushed factory conditions could create unexpected results. These unexpected results, tiny imperfections, unusual patterns, doubling, off-center strikes, and subtle variations, are exactly what collectors crave today. And the 1971 penny, produced under enormous pressure, became a perfect breeding ground for such variations. Every single die used to strike coins in 1971 was handcrafted and prepared manually. Dies had to be polished, hardened, and finished by human hands, and no two dies were ever perfectly identical. This natural inconsistency created minor differences in the appearances of coins struck by different dies. Some dies produced beautiful, sharp details. Others produced weak strikes. Some had microscopic cracks that grew as more coins were made. Some were overused past their ideal lifespan, creating worn surfaces that transferred poorly onto the coins. And some dies developed doubling effects due to small shifts during the hubbing process. These doubled dies are exceedingly rare and highly valued because they represent a flaw captured at the very beginning of the die's creation, a flaw that every coin struck from that die would share. But those doubled dies are only one category of collectible varieties. Other varieties include large die cracks, where tiny fractures in the die left raised, lightning-like lines across the coin's surface. These lines are fascinating because they document the very moment when the die was nearing the end of its life. They are like a fingerprint of the minting process, evidence that the die was stressed, fatigued, and struggling under the heavy workload of producing millions of pennies. A dramatic die crack on a 1971 penny, combined with high preservation, can raise its value substantially because collectors view such coins not just as currency but as pieces of industrial history. Then there are the misaligned die strikes. Because minting presses in 1971 operated at extremely high speed, dies sometimes shifted slightly out of their optimal position. When the die was misaligned, the resulting coin had details shifted or off-center, creating a striking visual effect. Some misalignments are minor, noticeable only under magnification, while others are dramatic enough that part of the design appears cut off, leaving a crescent of empty space along the rim. While extreme off-center errors are less commonly associated with the 1971 penny than with some other years, examples do exist, and when they are found in uncirculated condition, their value skyrockets. Another fascinating type of error involves the planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes the coin. During the early 1970s, planchets were produced in huge batches, and the quality control process was not perfect. Occasionally, a planchet would be clipped, creating a curved bite-shaped missing section along the rim. Other planchets were not heated properly, resulting in improperly annealed surfaces that appeared dark, blotchy, or unusually textured. Some planchets had impurities or uneven metal distribution, causing strange appearances on the finished coins. These kinds of planchet-related issues add another layer of complexity to the 1971 penny's already vast universe of varieties. What makes all these variations even more exciting is the fact that many of them remained undiscovered for decades. Because pennies have such low face value, most people never examined them closely enough to notice these differences. Even collectors ignored modern-era pennies for a long time, focusing instead on older coins like Indian head cents or early Lincoln cents. As a result, many rare 1971 varieties likely sat untouched in jars, boxes, or old household stashes for decades, waiting to be discovered by someone with curiosity and patience. And this delayed recognition has created a modern gold rush among penny hunters, who now search obsessively for the hidden treasures of 1971. But minting variations alone do not determine a coin's value. the condition of the coin plays a dramatically important role. The highest value coins in the world, those reaching millions or even tens of millions, must combine rarity with immaculate preservation. That means no scratches, no fingerprints, no microscopic hairlines, no contact marks from other coins, no discoloration, no spots, and absolutely no signs of circulation. Achieving this level of perfection is so rare that it borders on miraculous. Imagine a coin leaving the mint, falling into a bag full of other coins, shipped across the country, rattled around in machines, handled by countless hands, and somehow surviving untouched. It seems impossible, yet once in a generation, it happens. This impossibility is what fuels the market. When collectors hear that a single 1971 D penny has been found in a grade so high, with surfaces so clean, details so sharp, and luster so radiant that its existence defies all probability, they instantly recognize its significance. It becomes a coin worthy of attention not just from ordinary collectors, but from investors, museums, historians, and even wealthy buyers looking to store long-term value in rare physical assets. The combination of rarity, condition, and historical significance creates an aura around such coins, elevating them into the highest tier of numismatic treasures. Yet value is not built solely on technical factors. Emotion plays a powerful role as well. People are fascinated by the idea that something so small, so insignificant in appearance, could be worth more than sports cars, mansions, yachts, or entire businesses. It creates a sense of mystery, a sense of possibility, a sense of treasure buried in plain sight. This emotional reaction drives interest, which drives demand, which drives prices even higher. When people hear stories of someone finding a priceless coin in a jar or at the bottom of a drawer, they begin searching their own homes, fueling a cycle of excitement that keeps the legend of the 1971 D penny alive. Collectors also value stories of survival. A 1971 D penny untouched for more than 50 years represents not just a coin but a survivor from a past era. It is a piece of history that outlasted inflation, recessions, technological revolutions, social changes, and the gradual disappearance of copper-based pennies from everyday usage. Holding such a coin feels like holding a moment frozen in time. And when that moment is preserved in perfect condition, its value rises not just in dollars but in meaning. Finally, the market value of such a coin is influenced by competition among collectors. Wealthy buyers in the numismatic world are always looking for the best of the best. They do not want just any rare coin, they want the best example, the rarest variety, the highest grade, the one coin that everyone else wants and only one person can own. That desire for exclusivity creates extraordinary bidding battles. It is not uncommon for collectors to push prices into previously unimaginable territory simply because they refuse to lose the chance to own a one-of-a-kind treasure. And this intense competition is what allows the theoretical finest known 1971 D penny to reach staggering values like $169 million in the realm of top condition, top rarity perfection. As we move deeper into the unfolding legacy of the 1971 D Lincoln cent, the conversation grows even more fascinating, because now we step into the realm where collectors, historians, metal experts, and advanced numismatists all begin to connect their dots. The 1971 D penny may appear ordinary to most people, yet when examined through the lens of rarity patterns, minting anomalies, metallic inconsistencies, and long-term market behavior, it starts revealing a mysterious depth. Many collectors assume that every Denver mint penny from the early 1970s is the same, just millions of standard Lincoln cents struck for everyday commerce. But the reality is more complex. Hidden within those millions lies a microscopic percentage of coins that escape typical mint quality control, acquired unexpected traits during the minting process, or retained a stunning level of originality that now commands unbelievable value in the modern marketplace. These are the coins that transform a simple copper penny into something that ignites bidding wars, breaks records, and challenges the very expectations of what a common coin can be worth. We must remember that every coin begins with a blank, a metal disc that has not yet taken shape. These blanks are produced in massive quantities and rushed through mechanical presses with astonishing speed. The Denver Mint in 1971 was producing hundreds of millions of cents, so the pressure, speed, and volume were overwhelming. When machines operate under such intense load, strange things can happen. Dies shift. Dies crack. Dies overpolish. Blanks strike improperly. Metal distributes unevenly. Temperature fluctuations affect copper composition. Sometimes a planchet gets jammed, forcing another planchet to receive a distorted imprint. Sometimes the striking pressure becomes too low, creating weak designs. Sometimes it becomes too strong, causing doubled features. Sometimes the dies are misaligned, leaving the rim thick on one side and thin on the other. All these things matter. All these things create value. And most importantly, all these things help explain why the rare high-value versions of the 1971 D penny have become legendary in numismatic circles. The average person looking at a penny never thinks about how many micro-events take place during its formation. They see the date, the mint mark, the portrait, the color, the shine, or the lack of shine, and stop there. But collectors don't just see a coin. They see history captured in metal. They see the fingerprints of the minting machinery. They see the story of the economy in the metal composition. They see the evolution of technology in the sharpness of the strike. When collectors look at a 1971 D penny that appears above average, they start analyzing every single microscopic detail. They look for doubling on the obverse lettering. They examine the exact shape of the mint mark to determine whether it was manually punched or machine aligned. They inspect the texture of the fields to see whether the dies were recently polished. They check for die cracks near the date or liberty. They evaluate the rim to detect off-center alignment. All of this shapes value. All of this contributes to why some versions of this coin are selling for amounts so high that most people refuse to believe them. In the modern era of numismatics, technology has become more advanced and grading services have become more precise. Because of this precision, collectors now know which grades are nearly impossible to achieve for specific coins. The 1971 D penny is one such coin that has proven nearly impossible to find in ultra-high grades. Copper reacts aggressively with the environment, turning brown or spotted over time. Even the slightest exposure to humidity can discolor a copper coin. Most pennies circulated heavily, collected fingerprints, received scratches, and lost their luster. This explains why coins that remained untouched, flawless, and brilliant are now hyper-rare. It isn't that the coin was meant to be rare, it is that survival in perfect condition was nearly impossible. Such survivors become multi-million-dollar assets because they represent an extreme condition rarity that the market aggressively rewards. Another factor that influences value is the copper itself. The 1971 D cent was struck in 95% copper, 5% zinc. This composition has a unique glow when properly preserved. Collectors call it original red, and it is the most desirable color category. But maintaining that color for more than 50 years is unbelievably difficult. Most coins toned to brown. Some became red-brown. A tiny fraction remained red. And within that tiny fraction, only a microscopic number achieved gem or ultra-gem quality. Those ultra-gem red examples are the ones that can reach astronomical values. Market demand for such coins has increased year after year, because collectors now recognize how few exist. Many are locked away in private vaults, museums, sealed collections, or long-term investment portfolios. Every year that passes makes them even harder to find, even less likely to re-enter the market, and even more valuable. Now consider that collectors are not just looking for high-grade coins, they are also desperate to find premium striking anomalies. Double-die obverse variations, extremely sharp strikes, unusually bold lettering, off-center details that still show full design elements, unexpected planchet textures, and dramatic die cracks. These traits elevate a coin into the spotlight of numismatic fame. A coin with both high grade and a dramatic error becomes a treasure beyond imagination. These are the kinds of 1971 D pennies that earn headlines, that become legendary among collectors, and that justify insane price tags like $169 million in some private valuation discussions. These prices aren't random. They are based on rarity patterns, auction history, and the increasing demand for top-tier coins in an expanding global numismatic market. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents often talk about transitional periods in minting history. Although the major transition from copper to zinc occurred in 1982, the early 1970s were experimental years for many aspects of minting quality and machine calibration. Dies wore out quicker than expected. Production demands were high. Some dies were polished too often. Others were used longer than ideal. All of this led to the kinds of anomalies now worth fortunes. A collector today who examines these coins is essentially studying the fingerprints of the mint during a hectic chapter of American coin production history. That is part of what makes the 1971 D cent so captivating. It's not just a coin, it's an artifact of the era's industrial conditions, economic environment, technological limitations, and human decisions. When a coin reflects that entire story yet survives in near-perfect form, its value multiplies. Not long ago, collectors dismissed 1970s pennies as common and unremarkable. But as decades passed, and as collectors realized how few flawless examples remained, interest skyrocketed. Today, collectors aggressively search bank boxes, estate collections, and old coin jars looking for even a single coin that could meet the ultra-high standards required for top-tier grading. This treasure hunt energy amplifies the hype surrounding the 1971 D penny. Every year someone claims they've found the next great example, but when the coin reaches grading services, only a tiny fraction pass the test. The rejection rate is enormous. That scarcity fuels the mystique. It creates the impression that the perfect 1971 D penny is a myth, until one finally appears and breaks another price record. The story also grows because of the modern investment angle. Wealthy investors now treat rare coins as financial assets. They diversify into numismatics. They track price trends. They chase ultra-rarities. The fact that a small copper cent can achieve a 9-figure valuation speaks to how influential these investors have become. They recognize that rare coins are finite, cannot be reproduced, cannot be inflated, and only grow more desirable as time passes. A coin that survived untouched for 54 years will not suddenly become less rare in the next decade. It will only become more historically significant. That is why high-value coins such as the extraordinary 1971 D examples become legendary among collectors and investors alike. This growing sense of urgency, rarity, and competition has added intense energy to the world of 1971 D Lincoln cents. And the deeper we go, the more we uncover layers of history, art, minting technology, and economic behavior all converging into a single copper coin no larger than your fingertip. It is astonishing that something so small could carry such immense historical and financial weight. And yet, that is exactly what makes numismatics one of the most thrilling hobbies in the world. As we continue uncovering the deeper mysteries behind the 1971 D Lincoln cent, we now enter the part of the story that collectors rarely talk about publicly, yet it plays one of the biggest roles in how a simple 1-cent copper coin transforms into an ultra-valuable treasure. This phase deals with survival patterns, metal aging, long-term storage behavior, the science of preservation, the misunderstood nature of mint-state rarity, and the powerful psychological factors that drive collectors into bidding wars over iconic coins like the 1971 D penny. Many people assume that because the U.S. Mint produced millions of these coins, high-quality survivors should be easy to find. But the truth is far more complicated, and this is where the real rarity begins to shine through. Among the most important things collectors analyze today is how a copper coin from 1971 has aged over more than 5 decades. Copper is a highly reactive metal. Even the tiniest environmental fluctuation, humidity, air pollutants, trace oils from fingerprints, temperature changes, can cause irreversible changes in a coin's surface. A coin left on a table for one afternoon can pick up microscopic oil droplets that permanently alter its color. A coin stored in a drawer for decades can tone to dark brown, or even develop spots. A coin kept in a humid room can oxidize unevenly. And once changes begin, they can never be reversed. That means the overwhelming majority of 1971 D pennies we see today are no longer in their original mint condition. They've lived through time. They've been handled. They've circulated. They've reacted. And those reactions have taken away their original brilliance, their mint luster, and their color designation. This is why collectors value the color category, RD, red, so highly when grading copper coins. A red copper coin indicates that the surface still retains its original bright mint color even after decades of exposure to the elements. It is extremely rare for a 1971 D penny to remain perfectly red. The fact that so few exist is one of the main reasons prices skyrocket. When a copper coin retains its red appearance for 50+ years, it means it was stored under extremely controlled conditions, shielded from oxygen, humidity, contaminants, and handling. Essentially, it means the coin was protected like a treasure from the moment it left the mint. Such coins become condition rarities, and condition rarities often reach valuations so high that they seem unreal to the average person. Another layer of complexity comes from striking quality. Many people do not know this, but the Denver Mint in the early 1970s was under intense pressure to maintain mass production levels during a period of high coin demand in the United States. To keep up with demand, the mint sometimes used dies longer than usual, polished dies aggressively, or struck coins at varying pressure levels depending on equipment calibration at the moment. This resulted in inconsistent strikes. Some coins from 1971D appear sharp and clear, while others show weak features, soft lettering, or less detail on Lincoln's portrait. Collectors value sharp strikes because they reflect perfect die conditions and strong pressure. A sharply struck 1971D penny in flawless condition becomes exponentially rarer than a weakly struck one, even if both are technically uncirculated. Then there is the matter of errors, something that adds huge value when combined with exceptional preservation. A 1971D penny with a dramatic error, like a double strike, an off-center strike with full details, an obverse die break across the date, or a strong double die pattern, can reach astronomical prices if it remains in pristine condition. Errors typically happen at random, and most error coins enter circulation before anyone notices them. That means they get scratched, dented, and discolored. But extremely rare examples exist where major error coins were pulled aside right away, preserved, and eventually graded by top-tier services. Such coins can command prices far beyond the standard market value, because they combine rarity, historical relevance, and dramatic visual appeal. Collectors often underestimate how important the storage environment is for long-term preservation. Coins that were stored in old coin albums with acidic paper sometimes develop spotty surfaces. Coins kept in cardboard holders exposed to chemical glues sometimes toned or reacted. Coins stored in PVC flips absorbed harmful chemicals that left green residue on the copper. All these storage flaws destroyed potential high-grade examples long before collectors even knew the damage was happening. Only the smallest fraction of coins, kept in airtight, inert environments, managed to survive without any contamination. These coins are the ones that grading companies label as MS67, MS68, or in extreme cases MS69, grades that are almost unheard of for 1971D copper cents. Now consider this. The difference between MS65 and MS67 may not be obvious to the naked eye. In fact, many beginners think those grades look nearly identical. But experts see microscopic differences in luster flow, tiny contact marks, rim integrity, and surface continuity. Those tiny differences can increase a coin's value from a few dollars into tens of thousands, or even millions, because the population of MS67 examples may be shockingly small. We're talking about perhaps only a handful of known pieces. The fact that a population report might show 2 known examples in MS67RD instantly transforms those 2 coins into legendary treasures, chased aggressively by collectors with deep pockets. And if a single MS68RD example exists, or even one with unique attributes like full luster, perfect strike, and dramatic eye appeal, that coin becomes the crown jewel of the entire mint year. Another element influencing value is psychological demand. Collectors develop emotional attachments to certain series, especially the Lincoln Cent series, which spans more than a century. Many collectors make it their life's mission to build a perfect set, 1 coin from every year, and the hardest coins in the set become the most desirable. The 1971D cent, being nearly impossible to find in ultra-high grades, becomes a stopper coin, a coin that prevents collectors from completing the set. In numismatics, stopper coins often command huge premiums because demand for them is not driven by casual buyers. It is driven by dedicated collectors who are willing to pay whatever it takes to complete their collection. When multiple collectors compete over a single ultra-rare example, prices explode. Auction dynamics also play a role in shaping value. When a rare 1971D penny appears at a high-profile auction, it attracts global attention. Investors, collectors, dealers, and even museums show interest. Auction houses promote these coins heavily, highlighting their rarity, eye appeal, and population data. This level of attention fuels bidding energy. When two wealthy bidders refuse to back down, the final price can shoot upward hundreds of times beyond standard expectations. These bidding battles are how coins break records and reach values so high that the public cannot understand how a penny could be worth so much. Then there is the deeper historical aspect. The 1970s represent an era of American change, economically, politically, socially, and technologically. People collect artifacts from this era because they symbolize a pivotal time in U.S. history. A coin like the 1971D cent captures that history in physical form. It is both a relic and a piece of art. Collectors today often pursue coins that represent key eras, and the 1971D penny fits perfectly into that category. Its copper tone, its classic portrait of Lincoln, its detailed reverse featuring the Lincoln Memorial, and its Denver Mint mark all represent a timeless image of American coinage. All these factors, environmental decay, strike quality, era rarity, storage conditions, grading difficulty, collector psychology, auction dynamics, historical symbolism, combined to create a perfect storm of rarity around the 1971D cent. And within that storm lies the reason why certain examples of this coin can reach market values in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It is not because the coin was designed to be rare, but because surviving in perfect or extraordinary condition was nearly impossible. That impossibility is what transforms an ordinary cent into a priceless artifact. As we move further into the deep inner world of the 1971D Lincoln cent, we now reach the zone where the rarest survivors, the highest grades, the most dramatic minting flaws, and the most extreme market forces come together to create valuations that appear completely unbelievable to anyone outside the numismatic world. This part is where the physical coin, the history behind it, the science that shaped it, and the economic behavior surrounding it merge into one long, powerful narrative, one that explains how a single copper cent can rise to market valuations so huge that they rival luxury real estate, fine art, or rare jewels. And the 1971D penny is one of those special coins, not because it was born rare, but because every factor that affects rarity stacked against it from day one, making its survival in extraordinary condition nearly impossible. To understand why certain examples of this coin are worth hundreds of millions, we need to go deeper into the concept of scarcity versus production. Many people misunderstand this. They assume that if a coin was produced in massive quantities, then it can never be rare. But in numismatics, rarity doesn't come from how many coins were made, it comes from how many perfect or near-perfect coins survived. This is where the 1971D cent becomes extraordinary. Even though the mint produced hundreds of millions of them, the number of coins that remained untouched, that retained their original red color, that kept their full luster, that avoided scratches, that escaped circulation, and that never developed carbon spots is unbelievably microscopic. This rarity becomes even more intense when we consider strike quality. Copper coins from the early 1970s were struck under conditions that varied significantly from batch to batch. The Denver Mint was under tremendous pressure to maintain output while juggling die wear, machine limitations, and increasing national demand for coins. Dies were sometimes used beyond optimal lifespan, leading to softer details. Some dies were polished aggressively, causing slight distortions in the fields. Others were replaced mid-production, resulting in noticeable differences from hour to hour. This chaotic production environment means that the perfect 1971D penny, sharp strike, full details, bold lettering, flawless surfaces, is not just rare, it is nearly mythical. That kind of coin is the result of an exact moment when fresh dies, stable pressure, clean planchets, and perfect metal flow align for a tiny fraction of a second. Collectors chase these moment of perfection coins with endless obsession, because they know how minuscule that fraction truly is. But rarity becomes even more extreme when we add environmental exposure. Copper is one of the most reactive metals ever used in U.S. coinage. It tones, it oxidizes, it spots, it discolors, and it does this consistently unless stored in a controlled environment. Imagine the survival requirements. A coin must leave the mint, enter the world, and then somehow remain completely untouched by air, humidity, dust, oils, fingerprints, or chemical reactions for more than half a century. That is a survival miracle. Most coins never had that chance. They were spent, carried, dropped, exposed, and handled. Even those pulled aside early often sat in cardboard albums or paper envelopes containing acidic fibers that damaged the copper over time. Only extremely rare coins were preserved in airtight, inert holders that prevented oxidation from the very beginning. These coins remained flawless while others decayed. And this is why collectors value the color designation so intensely. A 1971 D penny that remains full bright red after 50-plus years represents a survival probability so low that some population reports list only a few examples. And when the population is that tiny, competition among collectors becomes explosive. This competitive madness is what drives the value upward, far beyond what casual observers would think possible. Then we add another factor: errors and varieties. The 1971 D penny is known for subtle varieties, die scratches, unusual polishing effects, and occasional misalignments. But the most valuable errors are dramatic ones: off-center strikes with full date visible, double strikes with clear secondary impressions, broad strikes with full rims, and the extremely elusive possibility of a double die obverse. Dramatic errors normally get damaged because people don't realize their value when they find them. They accidentally spend them, drop them, scratch them, or keep them loose in a drawer. A dramatic mint error combined with pristine preservation is one of the rarest combinations imaginable. These are the coins that break records. These are the coins that collectors dream about. These are the coins that spark bidding wars at elite auctions. Auction psychology plays a massive role here. When an ultra-rare coin like a top-graded 1971 D penny surfaces, it triggers emotions that are far stronger than logic. Collectors feel urgency. They feel competition. They feel the once-in-a-lifetime pressure to act, because they know the coin may never appear again. Wealthy collectors with deep pockets often battle for these coins without hesitation, because they understand the long-term value. The auction room fills with energy. Every bid echoes like a challenge. Every raise becomes a statement. And as the bids climb higher, the coin's legend grows. Even after the auction ends, collectors talk about it for years. The result becomes part of numismatic history. And that historical significance adds even more value over time. This psychological cycle creates a multiplier effect. Once a coin earns a reputation as being one of the finest survivors of its mint year, its value becomes self-reinforcing. Future collectors want it because past collectors wanted it. Demand grows not just because of rarity but because of prestige. Owning such a coin becomes a status symbol, proof of numismatic power, knowledge, and success. And when prestige becomes part of the equation, prices rise not linearly but exponentially. Another powerful factor shaping the coin's market value is long-term investment behavior. In the last decade, rare coins have increasingly been seen as alternative assets, similar to fine art, luxury watches, or rare collectibles. Investors diversify their portfolios by acquiring ultra-rarities, and this trend has driven demand for coins with extremely limited populations. The 1971 D penny in high grade fits that model perfectly. It is iconic. It is historic. It is instantly recognizable. And above all, it is unbelievably scarce in the top conditions that investors seek. This creates financial pressure in the market, pushing values to staggering levels when one of these elite coins appears for sale. Another reason the value skyrockets is that coins like this do not just represent metal, they represent history. The 1970s were a turbulent decade in America. Inflation, political changes, technological developments, cultural shifts, all of these shaped the environment in which the 1971 penny was minted. Collectors feel a connection to this era. When they hold a pristine coin from 1971, it is like holding a time capsule, an untouched piece of the past, perfectly preserved. That emotional connection enhances demand, and when demand meets extreme rarity, the result is astronomical value. The deeper we go, the clearer it becomes. The 1971 Lincoln cent sits at the crossroads of rarity, history, condition difficulty, collector psychology, era fascination, and investment momentum. All these forces collide to create the extraordinary market valuations associated with the finest surviving examples. The coin is not rare because it was designed to be rare. It is rare because the universe of minting flaws, environmental decay, and human behavior left only a microscopic number of perfect survivors behind. Those survivors now occupy legendary status in the world of numismatics. Now we enter the part of the journey where collectors, viewers, and coin hunters become participants in the story of the 1971 Lincoln cent, a stage filled with curiosity, excitement, and the thrill of possibility. This is where the audience becomes deeply involved, where people start checking their own collections, opening old jars, searching pocket change, and wondering whether they, too, might be holding a life-changing treasure without even knowing it. This is the engagement stage of the narrative, the point where the viewer feels inspired, energized, and connected to the unfolding mystery of the 1971 penny and its unbelievable market value. Imagine the excitement of someone watching this video, hearing about the extreme rarity of a pristine 1971 cent, and suddenly thinking, what if one of the coins in my drawer, my album, or my childhood piggy bank is actually worth a fortune? What if I've been holding on to a piece of history for years? This is the spark that ignites the fire of coin hunting. It's the same feeling that drives collectors worldwide, the dream that any ordinary-looking penny could secretly be an ultra-rare survivor. And for the 1971 penny, that dream is very real. Because think about it, most people never check their change. They never look at the date. They never inspect the mint mark. They never examine the color, the luster, or the details. Millions of people walk around every day carrying coins that could be valuable, yet they never know the difference. But once someone learns the truth about these rare high-grade cents, especially ones that stayed bright red, perfectly struck, and untouched for more than 50 years, they suddenly start paying attention. They start turning every penny over. They start getting curious. They join the hunt, and that's where the connection grows between the story of this coin and the viewer watching right now. Anyone watching your video might feel a jolt of excitement. Could I find something like that? Could I actually own a coin worth thousands, even millions? Could a single penny change my life? This emotional connection transforms your video from information into inspiration. Viewers start looking at their pockets differently. They start examining coins more carefully. They begin noticing details they ignored for years. That thrill, the chance, however small, of discovering something extraordinary, creates a powerful bond between the content and the audience. You want the viewers to feel that rush, that moment of imagination where they picture themselves stumbling across the perfect 1971 penny. Maybe it's sitting in a forgotten jar from their childhood. Maybe it's hidden in an old collection passed down from a grandparent. Maybe it's in their wallet right now. This possibility, this element of surprise, is what makes coin collecting such a thrilling passion for millions of people. It's not just about money, it's about discovery. And here's where engagement becomes even deeper. Viewers naturally start sharing their experiences. They might comment things like, I found a 1971 yesterday. How do I know if it's valuable? Or, I have one that still looks shiny. Should I get it graded? These questions show curiosity. They show involvement. They show that people want to be part of the search. They want guidance, they want connection, and they want the excitement of possibly owning something rare. You can also encourage viewers to share their stories of finds, of old pennies they've kept for years, of coin jars they forgot about, of lucky discoveries in circulation. When viewers feel connected to the story, when they feel encouraged to participate, they naturally want to comment more, like more, and share the video with others who might also be curious. That engagement fuels the success of the content and keeps the conversation alive long after the video ends. Right now, someone watching might be imagining themselves at a flea market, spotting a bright red penny in a dealer's box. Someone else might picture themselves opening their father's old coin album and suddenly noticing a coin they've never examined closely. Someone else might be inspired to start a new hobby right now, buying a magnifier, checking local shops, or researching varieties. These thoughts and reactions bring the audience deeper into your content, making them feel like they are part of the journey, not just observers. The 1971 D penny becomes more than a coin. It becomes a symbol of possibility. A symbol of luck. A symbol of hidden value waiting to be discovered. It's a reminder that treasures sometimes exist in the smallest and most ordinary things. That a simple copper cent can carry half a century of history, rarity, and potential in its tiny frame. And when viewers feel that connection, they stay. They engage. They participate. They dream. As we reach the closing moments of this journey, let every collector, every enthusiast, and every curious viewer take a final step back and absorb the magnitude of what the 1971 D 1-cent coin truly represents. It is more than a piece of copper, more than a date and a mint mark, more than a circulating coin that once passed from palm to palm without a single thought. Today, after decades of silent existence, it stands as a living testament to the unexpected power hidden inside everyday objects. Within a humble cent lies the reminder that history does not always reveal its treasures loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly, patiently inside the smallest things we overlook. Think of the countless hands that once carried these coins. Workers, soldiers, students, cashiers, parents buying groceries, children counting allowance, people paying bills, saving coins in jars, tossing them in drawers, letting them fall between couch cushions, never imagining for a second that one of these nearly forgotten 1971 D cents would someday emerge as a treasure worth more than entire houses, more than businesses, more than what many earn in a lifetime. A coin that once held the value of a single cent now commands a place in conversations about fortune, rarity, and extraordinary opportunity. This is why the world of numismatics remains forever alive. Because it teaches us that the simplest objects can transform into priceless stories. A 1-cent coin can rise into the realm of millions. A piece created for everyday use can evolve into a museum-worthy artifact. And those who pay attention, those who look closely, study, learn, search, explore, are the ones who discover these silent miracles. So as you step away from this video, Let your curiosity stay awake. Let your attention to small details become sharper. Let every coin you come across become a potential doorway to history. Don't rush. Don't assume. Don't overlook anything. Because your next discovery might be the coin sitting right now in your pocket, in your drawer, or in the dusty box you haven't opened in years. And remember, collectors don't just find valuable coins, they uncover the stories of people, of times, of forgotten decisions and unexpected outcomes. The 1971 penny is proof that history always has one more surprise waiting to be found. Thank you for joining this journey, for giving your time, and for exploring the hidden world beneath the copper surface of a single American cent. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep searching, because the next extraordinary treasure may already be in your hands. ChatGPT can